Okay, here's a new article out by Ancient Origins, and it makes quite a few connections to the ancient Egyptians, sacred geometry, music, and its sacred geometry inside of it, and a few other connections that most people try hard not to make. We're looking at here is a place called Naupa Iglesias or Naupa Hawka that's known in the Andes. It's carved out of a bluestone extremely similar to those of Stonehenge. We have a false doorway here and then two niches that apparently used to have something in it that no longer does. You can tell it got shattered at one time on the top part of it. It doesn't look like it's the way that it used to be up there. There are a few anomalies that are very similar to this, all in South America. You don't find much of this type of stonework anywhere in North America attributed to the Amerindians. The only other places in the world you will find this stonework is accredited to totally other people than these. And so a lot of people have made connections, as this article will. So let's just get into it. Naupa Iglesias, an Egyptian portal in the Andes. It's a little too bright. See if we could bring it down. Halfway up a near vertical ravine in the Andes, someone carved an inverted V-shaped entrance into the mountainside. Then they sliced the bedrock with great precision to create a shallow door that goes nowhere. The same design appears in ancient Persia and Egypt. And for good measure, they carved an additional altar with 3 alcoves into an outcrop of bluestone. This sacred site is named Naupa Iglesias, or more accurately, Naupa Hawka. Windows into this paradise. It's not by accident such doors are referred to as spirit doors, or windows into paradise. A Naupa is an inhabitant of the spirit world, and as it happens, the false door of Naupa Hawka marks the passage of Earth's electromagnetic currents, the very focuses that are known to generate out-of-body states. It takes a hard heart to stand here and not feel the palpable energy of the place. It is transfixing as much as bewitching, and perhaps that is the foremost reason why this site was carved in such a remote and inaccessible location in Peru. The very nature of its location makes an astronomical relationship unlikely, so we are open to entertain the idea that this temple was used for restricted shamanic rituals. Temples of a similar nature in other parts of the world typically require a difficult access, followed by a sensory-deprived environment which generates conditions. Man, I'm getting to where I hate this site. Just because of their one article there that whenever it changes tries to reset the whole site on you. So it's a difficult access way followed by a sensory deprived environment which generates conditions for the candidate to access other levels of reality. And this is seen through quite a bit of ancient rituals, but it looks like it's evident here also. Cheech and Chong. Musical measurements. This is not quite right. Let's see if I can get it. Whoa. The musical measurements of the main portal of Naupa Hawka are not random. They conform to musical notation. The length to the height ratio is 3:1, making it a perfect fifth in the second octave. The ratio of the alcove is 5:6, which is a minor third. We've talked about these ratios recently in a sacred geometry videos that I've got. Go to the site and look up sacred geometry. There's a string of 6 of them and about 9 more in other places, but quite a few of them make connections. Here's one with musicality, but it goes much deeper in understanding. Stay with me. The 5-6 ratio is both unusual and filled with special information. It perfectly describes the movement of the earth, whose pole completes one full rotation of its axis every 25,920 years. And we've shown you the connections of that: 108, 432, so on. While the plane of the equator tilts 4 degrees every 21,000 years. So this is actually a ratio of 5-6 also. This accurate calculation of the motion of the planet is also encoded in another unusual temple, the bent pyramid of Egypt, whose slope angles encode this same ratio. And we talked about this when we were talking about geometric shapes and dice, and like Dungeons and Dragons dice, and how they go at an angle and go at an angle, and what geometric shapes you can make out of things like this. And they've always tried to tell you that this was a mistake. Well, it may not have been able, this is the deduction, if they were to build it all the way up to the point of its height, because that's a steeper point, that it may not have been able to handle it. So they changed some midway in the whole idea. Well, there are people that say now that you can kind of detect inside of it that this is a stepped pyramid that has later been covered up with this, and for a reason making these exact angles even out of a stepped pyramid, if you follow me. And these are the first pyramids that were ever there, and we know just the ones before this was a stepped pyramid, and they added upon it, and Djoser and ones like that. So this is the pyramid of Senefru, but remember, we've got the idea that Senefru made 3 of them because he couldn't quite get his thing straight, or at least that's what they were trying to say. Dominating the unique environment of Naupa is the cave ceiling. It has been expertly sliced like butter. Bear in mind this, we are at an altitude of 9,800 feet, or almost 3,000 meters, on the side of a ravine, and smoothed like laser-like precision to create 2 different yet specific angles: 60 degrees, which is sacred to the Sumerians, and 52, which is also seen, and I've shown you that to be a sacred geometry number also, connects to the pyramids and everything else. There's only one other place on Earth where these 2 numbers appear side by side: the slope angles of the 2 major pyramids at Giza, where they had married heaven to earth. So we're looking at these slicing points over at the side, and you can see some building that went on, and everybody agrees it's much later, and they did this as a pilgrimage site to this place in some way that they would return to. But these other artifacts, they themselves say they were here from the gods, and other tales. The violent earthquakes that regularly lay to this region of the Andes to waste have exacted a fair share of damage at this site, preventing further exploration into this man-made cave beyond the latter-day low wall of stacked stone that prevents rubble from a partly collapsed ceiling to rain down onto the curious and intrepid who venture up the mountainside trail. And so they've got places that are blocking mountain slides that come down, and literally the rocks can come down on top of you at any time, and It's happened quite a few times. It's almost restricted in this area at this point for people to go. Still, there's another anomaly to be examined in this temple. Its creator picked the exact spot on the side of the mountain where exists a single outcrop of bluestone, appearing in stark contrast with the surrounding sandstone. Now, bluestone contains a type of crystal that was used in early radio receivers for its excellent piezoelectric qualities. The rock is also magnetic, another useful feature for shamanic journeying. But notice that they picked not sandstone, which was easy to carve, but the most difficult rock around, and it ends up being a very sarcen-like bluestone. Bluestone was also specifically chosen to build the oldest part of Stonehenge, leading its architects to source its sonorous granite over 150 miles away in Wales. And you can go into tales all about this and how it works, but there's some bluestone and where they had got it at and quarried it from. And a lot of people say, well, the quarrying is the incredible part. A lot of people say, no, it's just the fact of even being able to move these stones is the incredible part. Other people says, no. If once you check it out, they were moving and doing all of this so they could set up a calendar and marry the heavens to the earth in an ancient way that people had that carries all the way around the world. That we no longer pay attention to, or the other part of it, we've just assimilated into naturality and go, ho hum, that's the seasons. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Well, it goes a lot deeper than just the seasons. So that's stones at Carrum in Wales, an example of bluestones. Dolerite slabs, split by frost action, seem to be stacked and ready for the taking. The outcrop has been expertly shaved into 3 niches, and although partially dynamited by religious fanatics, oh, that's what happened to the top part of it. The delicate workmanship is still evident. Its central niche is similarly cut musical notation, the ratio 3 to 2, or a perfect fifth. So, other things found in this alcove, and along with a few other architectural styles found in South America, really are ooparts, extremely out of place artifacts, like this multiple portal doorway that's right here, and the way that it's been excavated into it, shapes and everything, compared to like what you would commonly refer to as Inca and Maya and things like that, and their possible architecture. Well, over and above that, the giant cyclopean stonework actually does the same thing. It's like, well, no, it doesn't work that way. So a lot of these sites, it looks like they regressed in some way. When they first got it going on, they had it going on, and then later they were shadows of their former self. You can even see variations of this happening to Egypt somewhat. You see it happening to Sumeria, of course. You see it to other places, and then people haven't made the connections yet on who was there in the first part, and then who was helped out and showed that second part, and then later when they left. And those people don't even do this anymore. They don't build things like this. Whereas the other one led to places like the Colosseum, great structures that we have today. But hey, have you seen those skyscrapers? They're just amazing. Reaching up in the sky much farther than any Tower of Babel. And I've got another vid coming on that, I believe. I've got one pulled up. We'll see. So these blue stones, sarcen stones, if you will, and musicality, and some of these stones actually ring out. If you have one up like a wind chime and hit it, they actually ring out also. The three-step design defines the Andean view of the universe: the creative underworld, the physical middle world, and the ethereal otherworld. The concept is idealized in the Chicana, commonly known as the Andean cross. Well, a lot of people in ancient times had this same view, and I've shown you quite a few times this tripled view that's given, where you have things that are dead and in the earth, and if they ever dig around, then they find bones, maybe even of a dragon or a dinosaur, but yet go, well, there are those things, and there are the things in heaven, and we're trapped in between. Well, in reality, we figured out so much more when we went into the idea of, well, are we trapped, or what's going on here, and the reality of the situation. Chicana literally means to bridge or cross, and it describes how the three levels of existence are connected to each other by a hollow reed, a cultural shared concept in ancient Persia, Egypt, and the southwestern United States, and the Celtic world. The oldest iteration of the design is carved on a monolith at Tiwanaku, the world's oldest temple complex, and it differs from the later version in that it is based not a square but a rectangle with the ratio of 5:6 again. So here we look at this again, and the other niche they were talking about, and these false doorways that these Aryans, like the Persians were, and the Egypt was on the river R, that's what they called it. Nilus is a Greek river god, just as Egyptus was with the Greeks. But here it is again, and false doorways, but yet there is one doorway for something, and people know this is the doorway of the sun. And it at one time, along with this big temple, lined up to go with the sunrise coming through this window, and we can see that echoed all over the world. It seems that Naupa was designed by a cosmic mason for anyone wishing to access another level of reality and communicate with the gods, which back in the day were either forces of nature or elevated people who were personified or understood how to control such forces. There were people back then that knew sacred geometry, the earth was round, the measurements of it, and everything. You're looking for a lost civilization. Here's one right here, and it may be the one that you know, you're just not putting it all together. Who created Naupa? Well, as far as the identity to the architect, certainly the Inca can be dismissed. Inca stonework pales by comparison in both scale and quality. They're merely inherited and maintained a culture that was, by in their time, the 14th century, already long vanished. Even the ancient Aymara claimed such temples were made long before the Inca. People keep trying to credit them with things they weren't credited with, like peanut butter. The style of stonework at Naupa is consistent with that found in Cusco, Ollantaytambo, and Pumapunku, and what these tiles share in common is the myth of a traveling builder god, in this case known as Viracocha, who together with 7 shining ones, yes, like the Anunnaki and so many other variations of, appeared at Tiwanaku after a catastrophic world flood, like maybe the events surrounding and after the Younger Dryas event that we've talked about so much, happening in this side of the world, mainly. Since dated to 9703 BC to help rebuild humanity. That's an exacting number. and really pegging pretty close to it. What's strange about the Viracocha stories is that with the first people that came there, they came to them and initially said they were gods. You can see around here this strange scribbling that they take adept to after it, and it looks very much swastika-ish, but yet they tell you that their gods were pale, looked just like them, pointing at them, the Spaniards themselves. Pizarro noted that their god was a bearded god, and so on, and I'll do another one about that bearded god story and the reality of it all pretty much. But what's strange, and people have tried to dismiss, is that none of these people, including Amerindians, grow facial hair. So where does this come from? Well, when was the last time they were experienced with people that had facial hair? Was this way before they even came into the Americas, and they still had it way back when? Whenever these extremely smart Proto-Indo-European type people they were running into that had facial hair? Terran Basin mummies, pyramids built back then, and they carried that into the Americas? Well, if they did, on the way people think, that would actually be seeing some all through the Americas down into South America. They wouldn't lollygag all the way down there and then stop and start to do something like this. Extremely counterproductive. Not even in their ways. Doesn't fit with Amerindians at all either, does it? So here's Viracocha, standing on something that looks like a step pyramid. A lot of this iconography in cut angles. Well, some people have figured out some of these angles here and everything are sacred angles that people always use. What is this deal with them always using this certain things? Well, I've tried to reveal quite a lot of that to you. Interestingly, the same group appears at the same time in Egypt as the Aku Shemsu Hor, or the followers of Horus. We've made connections and talked about that and how that connects with the ancient Sumerians and the Anunnaki. And this 7 celestial deities, they each have their representation, and they each have their little job. One does this, one does that. In every situation, it's pretty much the same. Isn't that amazing? Lost it again. Like, share, and subscribe, and enjoy, guys, and we'll go on to another. I could say more about this, but noting that they have the sacred geometry into everything. Certain angles, certain angels, all that reflect a similar concept. The eagle and the snake. How far does that go back? It goes way, way farther than anybody we willing to believe. Tens of thousands of years farther back. Peace.